Okay, welcome everyone. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. I'm gonna make sure I am loud and clear. Thank you, Mr. Bearman. All right, cool. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Jaclyn, also known as Professor Success. I'm here in my wonderful cape, but we know that our teachers are the true superheroes, especially in today's ever-changing world. Today, I welcome you all to the Virginia STEM Innovation Panel. This panel is a part of our Education Leadership Series. Legends of Learning strives to be on the cutting edge of new game-based learning strategies and techniques. In that pursuit, we have created this Educational Leadership Series to explore the latest technological advances, current and projected trends, and solutions to the issues affecting education today. Our ongoing series features collaborations with the best and brightest minds to produce thought-provoking and educational content. Now, I am eager to introduce you to some of Virginia's own brightest minds. Your panel today consists of, if you could give a wave when I call your name, Erin Lowery. Erin Lowery is a 6th grade science teacher at Fred Lynn Middle School in Prince William County Public Schools. She is also a STEM advocate and the robotics coach for the school. This is her 5th year teaching and her 2nd year at the middle school level. She believes virtual teaching is hard, but possible with the right tools and the right attitude. Next, we have Gina Townsend. She is the elementary science specialist for Prince William County Schools. She previously served as a 3rd, 5th, and 6th grade science teacher, team lead, and science department chair. She has been an educator for 13 years. Next, we have Cassandra Koch. She is a motivated, versatile, and inquisitive 8th grade physical science teacher. She is a science department chair, new teacher coordinator, and middle school STEM extending learning coordinator. She's in her 21st year of teaching at Gildersleeve Middle School. As a teacher, she believes we have to help our students achieve victorious, short and long-term goals and master real-world content in an ever-changing, fast-paced, technology-driven world. Okay, next we have Jaclyn McDonnell. She is the K-12 Science Coordinator for Williamsburg, James City County Public Schools. In her position, she works with teachers and other administrators to develop curriculum and support science instruction in their schools. Prior to this role, she was a middle school science teacher. In the division, she taught life science and physical science. And finally, we have Mr. Josh Bearman. He is the K-12 Science Instruction and Curriculum Specialist for Richmond Public Schools. He spent 7 years teaching middle school science in Richmond at Lucille Brown Middle and Franklin Military Academy before he left the classroom. First, for a position at the VDOE, and now he's in this current role. In this role, he is pushing Richmond's science curriculum to highlight the importance of authentic experience, personal relevance, and sense of place in all aspects of learning, even in a fully virtual setting. So that's our panel today. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So the panelists are going to unmute, and I'm going to ask them some questions. And I'm going to start with just a big question about lessons learned so far. What is now a best practice for your district that was not before? Josh.
Well, so in Richmond, we went from being, 1 to 20 to 1 to 1 in the blink of an eye. And so all of a sudden, best practice for us includes both teachers and students having some comfortability and some proficiency with all things technological, or at least with all things computer driven. I mean, we're in a virtual setting, but we are also experiencing a kind of a massive learning curve. Many of our students never saw a laptop except when they were testing. So that is becoming best practice for us anyway, is the use of technology.
I'd say in Williamsburg, our kind of best practice that we've found now is on Fridays, we do not have teachers actually synchronously teaching with students. And so we have specifically used Fridays for teachers to use professional development, as far as also having office hours. And then what we have definitely made gains on is across division collaboration. So we will have Zoom events with either all 7th grade science teachers at one time or all high school science teachers together. And so we just see huge collaboration taking place between teachers, and it's more so than ever because of the virtual capabilities that we have.
We do the same thing in Prince William County too, only our day is Mondays. Something else we got into was how much time the kids are spending in front of the screen per day, the amount of work that we're giving them, and the expectation that they'll actually be able to complete it.
And also, oh, I'm sorry.
Also in Prince William County, one of our best practices is integrating the content. We found that with the limited amount of time that students have online and with the asynchronous work that teachers are giving students to do, it's beneficial if we can integrate across the curriculum as much as we can.
For Newport News Public Schools, I think incorporating performance-based learning and assessments has been our best practice that I think that we're going to continue on in future years.
Yeah, it seems like across the board, some positive things that came from some best practices are just what computer-based, internet-based, virtual learning has enabled you guys to have increased collaboration, more integration, more communication, and actually is kind of a vehicle to make your teachers talk and collaborate more. That's a very positive thing. So the performance-based learning assessments, you spoke about that, Cassandra. I'm curious about how those look different in the virtual setting.
Well, we actually give them an actual real world scenario that they have to go through and go through the lab components, and they are actually collecting their data, and it might be virtually through like a PhET simulation or any other type of simulation to where they're collecting their data, but we want it to be applicable to the real world so they can really see the relevance of science to what they're doing each and every day. So it's not something, I know a lot of teachers were talking about, how do we keep our kids from cheating in this environment? They're you know, everything is at their hand. All the resources are there. We can't control that situation. So we thought instead of giving multiple choice questions they're just, you know, picking an answer, A, B, C, D, or E, we want them to actually be able to apply what they're learning to a different situation that they would come across each and every day. So these have been, we encourage collaboration with each other because that is a part of science. We want them talking to each other. And even when they're working as a group, they're dialoguing and they're talking science, which we really want them to do. But that really has increased our strategic thinking, our higher order thinking skills of our students. And they have to be able to explain and if they get data, actually explain it in word form to where each and everyone else can understand. So it's been very successful.
Brings a lot of relevancy and authenticity to the learning process as well. Gina and I just did a huge year-long training for PBAs and then implemented last year. It makes it, they can connect with it, and then it becomes more of a priority for them to do the work. Why am I having to do this? What does this mean to me? And it gives meaning behind what they're learning, higher engagement because of it.
And there's pros and cons with trying to produce a PBL in this virtual environment. At the district level, I'm hearing from a variety of our elementary teachers who initially they're just, you know, trying to get students used to this virtual world. So that took an amount of time. And to implement a PBL in the very beginning was something difficult they had to try to do. And some people were successful in that. Other people, on the other hand, were concerned about the amount of time that they had to spend on science curriculum. And they thought it didn't allow for time to produce a PBL, but we've tried to encourage them, since it is a project that is longitudinal, they could just do portions of it with the short amount of time that they had. And, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I need to do the science lesson, I need to get a grade for it, and have 3 grades by a certain amount of time. But if you were to go through the course of a PBL over time, you can get more results. You can integrate. You would have students buy in because they don't feel rushed and they feel like there's more that they can commit to it if it is over time. So we're hearing, a variety of reasons why and reasons why not.
Mm-hmm.
And we mainly did it at the
PBL.
end. We've done it at the end of our unit. So ours is a collaboration of all the skills that they learned during the unit. And they usually have the 90 minutes to complete it. Now, if they need additional time, I'll give them additional day or two. But it especially we've had them work in groups, and we've also had them work individually as well. But it's been very successful. I guess the hardest thing that teachers mention is it is more difficult to grade, but you have to think, get more bang for your buck, I guess you can say. We want to know that they've truly mastered the content, and just clicking a multiple choice answer is not showing and delivering that they have mastered and even exceeded that content. So
Josh, I was gonna say, Josh, you were nodding your head a lot when Cassandra and Gina were talking. And I'm wondering, as far as like PBL with you guys in Richmond, how does that look for you guys? And then performance-based assessments.
Well, in terms of PBAs, one thing that we've, at least with this, in this first quarter and second quarter started, or in the beginning of the second quarter started, is a district-wide PBA for our third graders where they're all monitoring the same incubator of hatching eggs, and they're taking daily data on the temperature and the humidity of the incubator, and they're plotting those data and waiting. Actually, today was there's a PIP right now, so there's a lot of very eager people watching this camera and listening out for peeps and any movement in the eggs. So what I was going to say is that the virtual environment does allow not only for kind of cross-district planning and collaboration on the part of teachers, but also cross-district collaboration on the part of classrooms, because they can all share a data set. They can also we've had some different teachers doing classrooms where they'll be taking their weather at where kids are, and then the south side, for example, and the north side, and they can compare if there's a difference. There probably isn't, but they're at least thinking about the fact that their location matters to what is happening in the world around them. And I think that's pretty positive.
So we've kind of alluded to hands-on activities, hands-on group activities that might be happening in the COVID environment. Can anyone speak to other hands-on activities they've been able to orchestrate from the district level or from the classroom for their students?
I can start with that. So we are just now kind of transitioning to a hybrid model. So as of November 16th, K-5 is coming back 2 days a week and kind of alternating. And we've, proposed a plan for what that looks like in the secondary world. So of course, with all of that transition, we need to think about what's safe, but also what's meaningful for student engagement when they are in the classroom. So to start with, some guidance has been, identify a equipment manager. And so that's going to be the person that uses the tools and touches the tools and then is socially distant working with the group. But what we've also started talking about with some of our teachers is the idea of you're going to still have students remotely at home. And so how do you keep them engaged? And so some of my teachers have started to do whole group kind of demonstrations as a teacher that's in front of the camera on her Zoom working with the students. But we've started talking about, once your skills have increased, what if your student lab groups are actually breakout rooms? And so some of the students that you have in your classroom are the liaison to then the students that are home working. So those are some of the conversations we're starting to have. I can tell you some of our very eager teachers initially, there was a teacher teaching AP biology, and she wanted to teach her students about different enzymes and the passageway in cells. And she went and got very small containers of Play-Doh and wrote to her AP bio students a personalized note, sent it home, and they all turned their cameras on. And this was, I think everyone knows, early COVID, we all struggled with getting cameras turned on from students. And so just as something as small as sending an 18-year-old Play-Doh to their house got some engagement. So we're trying to be as creative as we can, but also safe while doing so.
It's a struggle because you also have to think about what materials do they have available to them at home. We're a Title I school. excuse me. And we have a high percent of our population is free or reduced lunch. And so we know that we don't necessarily have access even to everyday things that we would think would be common in a household. And so we've really sat and worked very hard to come up with hands-on activities with items that we're fairly certain most of the kids have access to. When we were reviewing our scientific method process and the vocabulary, we did a water bottle flip lab where we played with the amount of water in the water bottles as the independent variable, and that went over really well. Lots of cameras turned on, everybody's engaged and participating with it. And when we were building molecules and compounds, I did mine with marshmallows and Play-Doh, but I had kids with Legos, kids that drew it, kids with pipe cleaners. I mean, they found whatever they were very excited to do it though.
We've heard from teachers too that also make, they select a student who is the teacher of the day for whatever day that is of the week for them. And they have a hands-on activity that they can share. Maybe they have spent some time with the teacher talking about it, teacher modeled or demonstrated it, but the student delivered it. And at the elementary level, that went over really well, because then you have cameras turning on and people wanting to pay attention because they know their day is coming.
It almost sounds like purposeful play to me. I know it's in a virtual world, you really still have to incorporate those relationships first and foremost. More than anything, those relationships are then going to open the platform for open dialogue between the students, where they feel more comfortable, they feel more willing to share and share with each other as well. I know in Newport News, we've also done more virtual lab stations, virtual labs. Escape games have been a wonderful key component because they love competition, and then just encouraging any type of breakout room or small group sessions to where they're able to dialogue in small groups as well as the large groups.
Cassandra, you struck a chord with my heart, and I bet a lot of people watching today about the relationships are most important. If you've got that relationships and the kids feel engaged, whether it's through purposeful play or it's relevant content to their life and what's going on with these 21st century students in COVID, then you're going to get them coming to the virtual classroom ready to learn behaviorally, emotionally, cognitively. Their screens will be turned on. They won't leave you hanging when you ask a question, and they're going to chat in the room. So I appreciate you talking about purposeful play and relationships are most important to get that engagement. It leads me to my next question, open to the floor. How are you incorporating play into your lessons? A couple of you have talked about it a little bit. How are you incorporating play from the district level? How do you see your teachers doing it, and for you in the classroom?
I've seen a lot of
Go on, Josh.
I've seen a lot of examples in the classrooms that I visited just of teachers in the beginning of the lesson when they're kind of doing an SEL check-in. Oftentimes those, I think the sillier the better seems to be the motto with that, because it loosens the kids up a bit to kind of want to open up. So I've seen some pretty fun little games and just kind of things where they have to pick the picture that resembles them the most, and then for that day, and talk about why that one is the one they chose. And anything that kind of brings the personal, like a little bit of personal and playful in with the kids, I think is very effective.
And because I deal with elementary teachers, that is so key, Josh. My teachers really wanted to go back to school. They miss their students. And so they try to make that connection by being vulnerable and doing those things like challenges. Elementary students love to challenge their teachers. And then if the teacher loses, she has to, do something that they've all agreed upon. And I love hearing those stories because it shows that the teachers are going above and beyond to interact with the students, to get them, to bring them on board. But then there's an expectation that, we're going to play hard, but we're also going to work hard. And the students they buy into that.
I wouldn't call it necessarily playing with them. But my classes start, the first 10 minutes or so are always open platform to just chat with each other. Let's just have conversation. As simple as every Tuesday, hey, how was your weekend? Anybody want to share anything that happened over the weekend? Or just getting them engaged that way. Or I like a good would you rather. It promotes some very interesting conversation. But they grow more comfortable with each other that way, and they're a little bit more open to being vocal when we move on to the lesson as well.
I know we've done kind of each week is like each day of the week is a theme. So Monday is like Motivational Monday. Tuesday, I call it Taco Tuesday, and that stands for Take Action, Create Opportunities. And then Wednesday is our asynchronous learning day. So that's Wacky Wednesday. And then Thursday is Thankful Thursday. And then Friday is Funky Friday. That's when we can kind of get silly with it. So each day we do something in the beginning with that theme to kind of get their focus, get their attention, and just get them excited because they're going through all these different classes where they're sitting the whole days. So what I tell my new teachers as well in the science department, you have to be that exception. You have to be that one class where they are excited to go to every day. So you have to be different than the others. So make it different, make it fun, make it engaging and exciting, and they'll want to be involved.
Cassandra, with your Taco Tuesdays and Wacky Wednesdays, I'm thinking that's something that might stick. I think that's really creative, and I've heard some really good ideas. We've heard some great ideas from you on how to engage students and keep that play factor and keep them engaged. I'm wondering what other things that you guys have incorporated new this year that you know is going to stick post-COVID. Like, what do you think is going to stick that you tried this year and it's been a blessing?
I think for us, one thing that's going to stick is that we're now 1-to-1, right? So kindergarten has tablets all the way up to 12th graders have laptops. I mean, I think that's going to stay, and we're seeing the value in kind of a centralized LMS and everybody using it now because you have to use it, not because it was an option before, but everyone's learned. So we're going to have that way to keep students engaged digitally. And the value in that is these formative checks and student data that you can get while having engagement. So what we see is that we're having a lot more conversations about student progress along the way. We know elementary has always been successful kind of monitoring student data, but we see this happening now at secondary as far as throughout a unit, not just that end of unit assessment, right? So we're using technology to help us with that, and that's something I really think will stick. And again, going back to what I've said earlier was just the division collaboration. I think we've all now more than ever realized we are a team and we all work together and have better outcomes when we pull our heads together.
Yeah, I'd like to ditto everything that Jaclyn just said and kind of add that with the one-to-one and the collaboration, there's a new focus on being more intentional about your planning and your teaching. I mean, I think we all know that there are people who were very good at very little planning and coming in and talking for 45 to 90 minutes, depending on the length of your class. And you can't do that in this setting. We're focusing at the district level and with my lead teachers on shifting most of the asynchronous work in terms of reading and watching videos and taking notes and kind of doing a version of a flipped classroom, although of course we're kind of 100% flipped. But moving into the future, when we do come back face to face, it's really going to be our goal to make sure that we don't just go back to things as normal, but we use this moment where we've had to make these big shifts to kind of push the philosophy of teaching forward in all of our science classrooms.
I agree with Josh with the flipped classroom model. That's what I was going to suggest. And teachers being more the facilitators and the students doing, and not the teachers doing all the work. Yes, it requires a lot of back end work, but during class, you want the students engaged and getting their hands dirty into that content. It does involve a lot of risk taking. And some teachers, again, are not comfortable with letting go of that control. And it's okay to not always be probably the best at maybe that particular technology resource or tool that you're using at that time. But if you're open and upfront with the students, they love that you're not, if you tell them, let's learn about this together, and they're more engaged and open and in it when you do that. They love that you're taking those risks to increase the rigor and the engagement in the classroom, and that really motivates them to learn.
I think it's important to also hit on the emotional aspect of all of this, that teachers have the patience of a saint, right? That's the saying. And we learned a whole new meaning of that word this year. to a level of patience I didn't think existed. And grace for ourselves, grace for our kids. And I think that that should be something that carries on as well. For a lot of us, we get a glimpse into their literal homes and we see what they are dealing with at home. I have kids that come to class on their Zooms with babies on their laps because they're taking care of their siblings and whatnot. So we know that they have these struggles at home too, and those struggles will not go away just because we come back into the building. So I think it's really important that we hang on to that level of patience and grace as well.
Mm-hmm. I think something that's going to stick, and this is what we've been trying to get teachers to realize and do in the face-to-face environment, is allowing students to show you that they understand the standard or they know the information in a variety of ways. So because we are virtual and students, everybody has, their different means of communicating and they have different devices, teachers are having to accept, homework in different forms or assignments turned in different ways. And that's something that we have always tried to get people to embrace. And so now they're having to embrace it. And, this student may only have one method of getting you his material or showing you that he understands. So people are willing to accept that a little bit more now. And I think it's just providing teachers with a pathway for understanding and just maybe more flexibility as well.
Right. Wow, that was great. It seems like there are a lot of lessons learned that will carry over, and I really appreciate that you sharing about patience and grace, Erin, and just having a peek into our students' world has been enlightening, I'm sure, for everyone across the globe. Mm-hmm. Thanks everyone for that. I'm going to shift a little bit, and Jaclyn, I'm going to look at you for this one. The idea of trying to push in science, for your schools when there's that competition with math and ELA time. How are you making sure science is still being incorporated and included and upfront for the students?
So for us, that was a concern when we were thinking about elementary schedules and what that would look like. I'm really pleased to say that we actually used this opportunity in the summer. We knew we were going to use Canvas, so we started 2 weeks after school closed last spring. So right in June, we had groups of teachers as our curriculum writers building the curriculum that teachers would use in marking period 1 and marking period 2. And we took a thematic approach. So there's a theme for each grade level that we identified per marking period. And what we actually found was that science was pushed forward more when we were doing the theme teaching because we were building literacy skills while students were actually learning about science content. And then their science kind of time was spent with application. So that's continuing. It's something that we hope will be kind of a common trend for us in the future years, but this year that is the curriculum that we're all using. And so we've also been able to build some common assessments with that thematic approach. At the secondary level, the science block has stuck. So there was no concern with any time going away. And it's kind of, again, that idea that everyone's been saying, using that flipped classroom approach, and just we're in a good spot for our K-5 students getting science.
I know in middle school, the hardest thing with Newport News Public Schools is we've gone to a semester with science, so we incorporate, everything that the whole year in one semester. So it is shortened, so we actually have 2 semesters, and I get different students each time. The key that I've noticed is that all science teachers, not even science leaders or administrators, but we all have to advocate and communicate and have those challenging conversations and dialogue about the importance of STEM in the real world, especially when it involves students becoming college, career, and citizen ready. I think it's so important. We are all talking about, English and math all the time. And for us, even the number of teachers advocating is less, which makes it hard because there's not as many as there are the English and the math teachers at the table. But I have those difficult conversations because they have to understand that science and every subject is important. So incorporating anything you can, whether it is in a PLC learning community where you talk to your other teachers so they can incorporate, like some nonfiction science reading in their classes. That's, you know, a wonderful opportunity as well.
Okay, now thinking about the I'm sorry. Okay, thinking about the second half of the school year, I've heard a couple districts in Virginia going virtual for the entire year. I'm wondering, what are you thinking for the next half of the year?
Well, we haven't made any firm plans, but I wouldn't say that I'm optimistic about the chances of us going back. I have no ability to make that decision for anyone. This is just kind of a gut feeling and what I get from talking to people. But moving forward, I think if we're going to be in this model, we have an opportunity to at least get as good at it as possible. Like Cassandra, our high schools are all on a 4x4, so many of my 9 to 12 grade teachers will be teaching the same course again starting in February. So I think that really gives them a lot of good opportunities, because between the district provided curriculum and what they themselves have written, some of that hard work and that heavy lift is done, so we can really get in and refine some of those lessons and some of those units for kind of maximum engagement and really work on making sure there's as much student collaboration as possible. I would love it if we could see our kids though. So that's just my less than optimistic feeling.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time for reflection though too, because you're figuring out, all right, what worked, what didn't, can we tweak it to make it work, or do we scrub it and try something new? Using the data and feedback to drive those kinds of decisions as well. I know that my science team particularly, we're looking at, you know, how do we get more of that group or collaborative work in there, some of those projects, and a little bit more of that hands-on.
Yeah, our teachers are looking forward to going back just for the hands-on, because they're finding it difficult to do that for reasons that Erin already stated. The equity issue plays a big factor in that, and they would love to be back in the classroom doing it. But until that time, model what you want your students to know and understand, and demo that in class and allow students to demo that if they can. One of the teachers told me she was talking about rocks, and she was showing them a rock, and the student left her screen and she didn't know where he was. He went outside and got a rock and brought it in, because he was so eager. He wanted to be involved in that demonstration. So I think students and teachers alike, they would love to be back in the environment that they're used to, but up until such time that it happens, just allowing for it to happen naturally, allowing it for it to occur. We have a risk assessment that we send home and for parents, and an at-home inquiry activity sheet that we send home with parents or to parents, so that they know that when there is science time, please allow for some supervision. We're going to try to use safe, everyday, at-home materials when possible, but know that something that we're doing in the classroom, we're going to demonstrate it, and your child may be eager to do it right then, or allow him to do it later on that evening when there's an opportunity, because the kids are excited. They want hands-on activities.
That little bit of normalcy.
One thing that we're doing to prepare for whatever steps we're going to take next, in our division, we call them paths. And so path 1 was we were remote, and now we're on path 2. And so elementary is back blended. And by the time we get to path 3, that's K-12 will be blended. And so we've shared a date that we would have all students back on a blended path. But I know we're watching COVID data carefully, and we have a COVID-19 dashboard on our school website. And I find myself checking that because I really like looking at data and numbers. But what we're doing to prepare is to really have meaningful professional development for our students. And by students, excuse me, I mean teachers, to have PD for our teachers. And we've had to go out as curriculum coordinators and research what hybrid models exist. And we see a lot of examples coming from university level, but we're all kind of learning along the way from other divisions. And so we are spending time talking to teachers about, there's a variety of hybrid models you could use, but we really want you to start with something that you're able to do and what you're successful with. And so, you could see teachers synchronously Zooming with students at home and teaching the students in the classroom. But what we're trying to push the ball forward a little bit on is capitalizing on that time that students are face to face and using it to build skills and to analyze and to do those deeper dives into content with hands-on experiences, because what's going to get those kids back in the building? Why do they want to be there? And so those are kind of the conversations we're starting to have, particularly with our 6th through 12th grade teachers, because we know that we've seen some success in marking period 1. Teachers are starting to feel more confident, but here we are now several weeks into marking period 2 saying get ready for this new way, this hybrid way of learning. And so a lot of our effort right now is supporting teachers with professional development, and also, Erin, to use your word, grace, just giving them grace. I mean, one thing I wrote when looking at the questions today was, what would you want everybody to know? And, just everything's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. And that's what I have to tell my own self sometimes, because my personality is I want things to be great, but everyone's just trying their best. And even moving forward, that's a common message that we keep saying. We're all just trying our best.
It definitely takes a collaborative team effort. In Newport News, our professional learning communities are such a valuable resource for sharing ideas and best practices. We do the 5E lesson model. And this is new for a lot of our teachers, but again, you said about that control again. I always tell myself now I need to just be A-. It's okay for mistakes to happen. And I think we have to help our teachers get in a different mindset that this is what it is now. And we have to meet our students where they are currently, not where they were, not where they're going to be, but where they are now, because that's where you're going to get the most growth and achievement factor in that case. And our students deserve the very best. So we need to kind of adapt and reflect in our best practices and find the best learning experience for the current situation.
Cassandra and the rest of you all know that at Legends of Learning, I spend a lot of time emailing, Zooming, talking on the phone. And I see a lot of quotes come across the bottom, do what's best for children. And one I've seen recently, it was like, things are going to keep changing, be flexible, period.
Yes. Well, it's so hard for teachers. That's, I think, been the biggest thing and the most conversations I've had with teachers. But if you're in a teaching profession, and I've taught for 21 years, it has changed significantly. And what I do is I start from scratch. So I don't even do the same lessons each year, because that's not for the kids I have right now.
Exactly.
I have to decide, once I meet my students, what is best for them, the students I have now, not the students I had 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we really need to change our thinking. Again, it's still teaching. We're still teachers. But again, we're using all these technological resources to increase achievement and increase those learning experiences and make them more engaging and innovating for our kids, because that's what they're used to. They're used to like the game-based platforms now. That's how they learn. So they're learning differently than we can't teach them how we were taught. Right. We have to teach them what they're currently used to.
And Cassandra, I believe that when I was in the classroom, I got bored with myself. So I always changed up the way I taught things, because I was bored with it, or they would bring that new group of students would bring something new to the classroom. They would bring in new ideas, new ways of doing things. And so I always change. And you have your calendar and you go back and try to look at the way you did it last year, and it's nothing like what you did this year. But I like that.
I scrap it. Every year is a fresh start. And we even, in my professional learning community, I have a variable amount of teaching experiences. And I have a first year teacher. I value what they have to say, again, because they're coming from such a different place. And I want to hear their ideas. So we're all sharing. And it's amazing when you do open the door for that dialogue to happen, and not say, oh, I'm a veteran teacher, I know it all at this point. Yeah. No, we don't know it all. And we need to actually come out and admit that. And because that's how we need to show our own students that we're continuously learning and growing ourselves, because they're more willing to do it too if we model those.
I've got one more question for the panel from us personally, and then I'm going to move and get some questions from the attendees. We have a great turnout today, and we've got about 15 minutes left. My question for you all is, how can companies like Legends of Learning better support, and maybe this is best for Josh and Gina and Jaclyn to answer from the district level, but how can we better support you, your district, your teachers during these times?
I think one thing, go ahead, Gina.
No, go on.
One thing that I've experienced with Legends so far this year, which has been incredibly helpful, is when we have monthly check-ins and just kind of the conversation of what's going on in your division, what's new, how can I support you, and the willingness to personalize the experience for our division. So the opportunity to say, hey, let me see your curriculum and we can build these playlists, and you're just getting started with us this year, so we want to get your teachers, you know, at least successful with even starting Legends. And so the ability to personalize the platform and the resources you provide us, or say, hey, I made this letter for X division, what if we tweaked it this way, could you use this with your students? You know, sharing email examples of how to encourage, you know, promotion of using the platform. So I just really am grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys, but also your ability to adapt the resource for our specific teachers.
Very good.
And that was the #1 reply from the teachers that I polled. They did say they were excited that Legends of Learning was incorporating the standards that our students have to know into the activities, and that because, and now we're dealing with elementary, because it takes them longer to adjust, teachers are just keeping it simple. They're working with the students routinely so that they can get used to these habits and form those healthy habits. And they're sticking to just a few of the, right now, first quarter, they're sticking to just a few of the activities or playlists that they've developed so that students can get used to it before they, you know, just introduce so many of their, so many other of the activities that you have. But they're really glad that they align. You all did all the work for them. They didn't have to do the work to come up with a game or an activity that satisfies the students. You all did the work. All they have to do is put it into play. So that was a resounding yes from our teachers in Prince William County.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition, having the ability to share amongst across the district, when one teacher creates a playlist, another teacher doesn't have to remake the wheel, you know, the ability to share playlists and Legends and other platforms like that, just having that ability for teachers to collaborate or share has been incredibly useful, as well as kind of the guidance as to where these different simulations or games fit best into a lesson sequence. Like Cassandra, we're 5E for the first time this year. And so having my teachers have that kind of comfortability of knowing that this will work better in this setting after I've done X, Y, and Z, or however it might be, has been very helpful.
The other thing I was going to add from the district level about Legends is it's incredibly helpful for us since we're using Canvas, that it connects right into Canvas. I know we're trying to keep our students kind of having to sign on, a single sign on, if you will, go to one location and here's everything you need. And so our teachers really appreciate that it's not going to this website and having to put in all your credentials again and dealing with the forgotten passwords, but that you guys kind of rise to the occasion and got everybody where they needed to be with Canvas.
And Jaclyn, that kind of answers the question that the person has in the chat too, with the daycare providers and other people that are able to utilize Canvas because they're familiar with it from what we're doing every day and the teachers are doing every day online. So because it has that ability to go through a platform, it's easy for them to provide opportunities for students when they can't do it with their classroom.
So in the chat room, Mark Sanders has asked, for students who are unable to be at home during instructional time, are you working with parents and child care providers on how to best support those students, or are you using other strategies? Anyone else want to add to that? Gina kind of covered it a bit.
I've seen our after school personnel work with students on their classwork, on Legends of Learning, any type of asynchronous learning that the teachers have suggested. And so I'm not sure if everybody has that ability, but I know that the Alpha Best child care providers in our county are able to.
I do a summary video too every other day. Once I've seen all 4 of my periods, I will create usually a pretty short video. Here's what we did today. Here's where you can find it. Here's how to do it. Come see me in my office hours or advisory, or if that doesn't work, send me an email. We'll schedule a time to get together. It all goes back to that flexibility piece again.
Yeah, I would say that we don't have a necessarily like one district approach to that, but like Erin, a number of my teachers who are just have acknowledged from day one that many of their students aren't going to make any of the synchronous meetings for various reasons, are making recordings or are structuring their lessons in such a way that missing the synchronous portion is not going to sink the student, that they're still able to do the work, because as long as they can get onto the platform and engage with the lesson in some way, they can be marked present as long as they understand what they're doing.
If there are any questions from attendees, we've had a couple come up. Somebody asked about professional development. Kelly Tate did, and I just shared that we're always open to provide professional development at Legends of Learning on your schedule, because if you're not comfortable with the platform or resource, you're not going to use it, and you got to carve out time for that. And then Mark, of course, gives a big thank you to all of you for your responses. So we'll leave it open for a little longer to see if we get any more questions from the panelists.
I know it's also been very helpful. I just wanted to speak on behalf of even Legends of Learning for listening to your customers, I guess you can say. And I even tell my students, I pick the games and the different tools, whether it be just learning or it's just a review game. I pick those based on those overall. You know how you pick 1 to 5. This one has a 5 rating, that one has a 1 rating. So you're listening to us the whole time. And I also know that since some of the standards are changing, we're taking more of a different approach. So our 6th grade teachers are using the 2018 standards. However, our 7th and 8th grade teachers are using the 2010 standards. And I love how you have now given the opportunity for them in Legends of Learning to click on the various standards to actually meet and align with their curriculum. That's been very helpful.
I think even further than that, Cassandra, when you get down into the classroom level and you're really talking about differentiating for your kids, to be able to go in and access different grade levels. So if I've got a WIDA 1 who is nowhere near 6th grade level, I can back them up to 2nd, 3rd grade, wherever they are at that point. So they still get to engage with the content, but they're doing it at a level that's more appropriate for them. And it's the same on the other end of the spectrum with our Signet or our gifted kids. If they're flying high with what we've got, I'll look at the 7th and 8th grade level and see if I can challenge them that way too. So it's a great amount of flexibility for really giving our kids what they need.
And you can change the level of difficulty too on the review questions that they're doing, whether it be a 1, 2, or 3. That's been helpful. And I know with 8th grade, I am an 8th grade physical science teacher, but our SOL, which we have in January, it's going to cover 3 years material. So a program like Legends of Learning is a wonderful tool, especially when it gets to that review of the previous standards, because I'll tell you one thing, I don't remember what I ate a week ago, much less learn 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been very helpful to kind of spark some of their learning from the past.
Our kindergartners went back hybrid last week, and we're on a schedule for 1st and 2nd and 3rd to go back by January. And so I reached out to Legends of Learning to look at schedules. What might hybrid learning look like in this, what might Legends of Learning look like in this hybrid environment? And they were able to give me a schedule. We were able to tweak it and add some of our things to it, but I was very grateful that teachers have an option on how they want to use it now. And a lot of them are using it in the classroom to introduce instruction and then allowing students to work with it asynchronously, especially for remediation. If Monday, when they have their office hours and students come back from the week, if there's something they want them to review, they can actually go over that material with them on Monday or assign it on Monday, just so they get that little extra bit of help.
And they can also, I have my youngest children too. They can also, and a lot of my normal middle school students, what they do is they get so excited about the program that, let's say our playlist ends for that particular day or what was assigned. What many of my students now have gone into is done the New Awakening experience, where they do create their student avatars and there's a leaderboard and it's more of a card-based battling. And they're still going through all the different content in the standards. So you're almost tricking them in a way, but they get so excited. And now that it's been available to more at the elementary level, I've had my students do it at home just to kind of push that science and math factor at home too. And it's been amazing. They've really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of neat to see them. You're just tricking them into learning. They have no clue that they're actually learning something at the same time while having fun. So,
Right. I've never had kids ask me for more work until we played Legends of Learning. Mrs. Lowery,
right.
the playlist is over. Can you add more games?
Oh, Erin, I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, our student user base increased by about 400 times during the pandemic, but I think parents were like, get on something fun, but science and math, like do something. You all have been sensational today. Thank you for your willingness to give us time during the busy week and your crazy schedules. And thank you for opening up about your districts and sharing some of your experiences. I really don't have much more for you all unless you've got some closing words for our attendees. I just appreciate everything. Thank